Good evening, and welcome to the August 25th Board of Adjustment meeting. Tonight, we just have one item on our agenda, and before we start, I just want to check with the applicant. There are only, where's the applicant's attorney? There's Attorney Bozen. There are only 5 voting members on this application, so we want to offer you the opportunity to have it heard when we have a full board. At most, we will only have 6 members to vote on this application, so just so you know.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We wish to go forward.
Okay, thank you. All right. So with that, the one item of business we have is Roman numeral 1, new business A, the request of Road to the West LLC owner for property located at 140 West Road, whereas relief is needed to establish an indoor recreation space, restaurant, event space, and outdoor dining area, which requires the following. 1, a variance from section 10.440 to allow use number 9.43, a restaurant and function room with an occupant load from 250 to 500 feet to 250 to 500 where it is not allowed. B, use number 4.30, indoor recreation use where it is not allowed. And C, use number 19.50, outdoor dining as accessory use to a permitted principal use. And 2, a variance from sections 10.1113.20 to allow parking spaces between the principal building and street. And 3, a variance from section 10.1113.41 to allow a 2-foot parking space setback where 50 feet is required. Said property is located on Assessor Map 252, Lot 2-1301, and lies within the industrial district. Who is here to speak to this application?
Madam Chair, good evening, members of the board. I'm Attorney John Boson. I represent Road to the West LLC, the owner and owner and operator of the Black Rock Social Club. Before I begin, I'd like to introduce you to some of the members of our team. First and foremost is Alex Choquette. Alex is the owner of Road to the West LLC and the Black Rock Social Club. We also are accompanied by Alex Ross, our engineer, Mark Giannini, our architect, Chris Hollis. Chris is the general manager of Black Rock, and also Christine Schindler, who is the executive director of the programming. We're here tonight to seek zoning relief that will bring our property into full compliance with the city's ordinances while preserving the unique community amenity that Black Rock has become. Black Rock is a venue that supports local charities and aims to raise over $1 million annually for local nonprofit organizations. This is an easy zoning case with a complex procedural history spanning the last several years. I'm going to keep the presentation tonight focused and concise on 3 things. First, what was approved in 2022, what has been done to the property since the approval, and what we're requesting tonight. So starting off in 2022, we have received approval from this board, unanimous approval for the property located at 140 West Road in the industrial zone to convert the existing use. The prior use was the Blitz Trampoline Park, and we received approval to operate the Black Rock Social Club, which is a private club offering indoor recreation. There are simulator games. Currently, it's fit out for live music. There's a restaurant bar to serve members and guests. The property is sort of a mixed commercial public utility development nearby. There's retail, there's a light industrial self-storage, and the DPW transfer station. On May 25th, 2022, this board approved variances to convert the existing industrial building into the private club with those indoor recreational uses. Those variances at that time were from 10.440 to allow indoor recreation use, which was not permitted in the industrial zone, and a variance from 10.1113.41 to allow parking located 2 feet from the front lot line where 50 feet is required. When we submitted our plans in 2022, the plan showed all of the indoor recreational activities, the golf and the sports simulators, the axe throwing, the billiards, the arcade games, and the lounge area. The plans also included a restaurant and bar area. Unfortunately, in 2022, we never specifically asked permission for a restaurant bar. I think it was a oversight, but it was on the plans, and it continued on the plans through the planning board approval in August of 2022. Where things got complex is that following the planning board approval, specifically November 21, 2022, building permit application 961 was filed to convert the building into the social club featuring the kitchen, restaurant, gaming activities, stairwell, and elevator. At that time, there were 2 floors in the building that were going to be repurposed. And that building permit contemplated food service, and the schematics were there to show the bar, the back bar, the seating. And the amended site plan got approved by the planning board, and the building permit was issued on June 5th, 2023.
So Attorney Boson, I just want to interrupt you for 1 second. You're free to present your application as you wish. However, we will only be deciding the variances tonight. know
I
that
completely
you've
understand.
planned other things, but again, you can present it as you wish, but we'll be seeking our deliberations of the variances.
Completely understand and appreciate it. I'm going to be as concise as I can. I thought it would be just helpful if you,
Understood.
and I'll go through this as fast as I possibly can. In November 2023, November 30th, 2023, Mr. Shirk had informed the city staff that the plans to convert these 2 floors were cost prohibitive, and he was seeking a reduction of scope in the project, limiting the interior renovations, and there was an application for a second building permit 272 filed for the interior renovations, and there was some fit up for business and office use at that time as well. On April 25th, that building permit was issued. As part of that, the applicant was seeking a refund of some of the fees associated with that, and there was a waiver that was signed that essentially on April 30th reduced the permit fees, but at the same time abandoned the prior approvals. I'm only giving you that background to explain how we got here again. Thereafter, interior fit-up continued, the bar in the kitchen was installed, permits were applied for and received, the paving, the parking lot was repaved, and that's how Black Rock came to be. Tonight, what we're requesting is that the 2022 approval did not anticipate all of the activities that Black Rock has become. For instance, there's no place to have lunch outside, so that's one of the things we want to address. The permit from 2022 didn't specifically make reference to, well, maybe there's a fundraiser that's going to have a comedy show. We never really specifically approved, we were seeking approval for indoor indoor gaming and recreation, but we never specifically said, well, what if there's a comedy show? What if there's a band? It's not a nightclub that we're proposing, but we're seeking to address the fact that we never specifically asked for a restaurant. It may have been on the plans, but we didn't ask for that. So we're here tonight asking for the restaurant use for our members. We're asking that we be allowed to have outdoor dining in some of the spaces as shown in the plans. And we're asking for the dimensional and the parking variances as set forth in the application. So that's sort of the procedural history that brings us here tonight. And with that background, I'll go through the variance criteria, which, as you know, this board can grant a variance if 5 criteria are met. First, that the relief is not contrary to the public interest. Second, that the spirit and intent of the ordinance is observed. Third, that substantial justice be done. Fourth, that there be no diminution in surrounding properties. And fifth, that there's unnecessary hardship. I'll start with the public interest. A variance is contrary to the public interest only if it violates basic objectives of the zoning ordinance, either by altering the essential characteristics of the neighborhood or threatening the health, safety, and welfare of the public. This neighborhood is a mix of commercial, municipal, and industrial uses. And as we know, the city has conducted many inspections and issued certificates of occupancy, assembly permits, food permits, and actually coordinated liquor license with the state. Black Rock opened its doors September 27th, 2025, and has coexisted with the neighborhood very well and has received a lot of support from local businesses and the community at large. So its continued operation is reasonable. I think it's reasonable for this board to conclude that the proposed uses do not threaten the health, safety, and welfare of the public, nor do they alter the characteristics of the neighborhood. And as you know, if the variances are granted tonight, this project will proceed through full site review with the planning board to further protect the interests of the public. Next, substantial justice would be done by granting the variances. And the test here is any loss to the applicant that's not outweighed by a gain to the general public is an injustice. In this case, denying the relief would force the applicant to cease operations, which would have a profound negative impact on the applicant who's invested millions of dollars into this project. It would be a loss to its members, many who are here tonight. It would be a loss to many of the nonprofit entities that have come to rely on Black Rock. As I mentioned, Black Rock's endeavoring to raise $1 million a year for local nonprofits, and they've gotten a really good start on that. And Black Rock adds to the uniqueness of our city. So those are just some of the points that I wanted to raise. In addition, the variance will not result in any change to the existing structure. The indoor recreation use with the restaurant and bar is compatible with the neighborhood, and it's similar to a prior approved use in this location. There was a trampoline park that served food there many years ago. And to allow the parking as configured will really go unnoticed to the public. In this case, there's no benefit to the public in denying the variances. That's not outweighed by a hardship on the owner. Next, there's no diminution in surrounding property values. There are a variety of commercial, industrial uses in the area, and the property's former use as a trampoline park did not impose any unreasonable burdens on its surroundings. So there's no reason to believe that the proposed use will do so now. The use is reasonable. It's a reasonable use of an existing built environment, and there's a lot of neighborhood support for Black Rock. So we don't think there'll be any diminution in surrounding properties. Next, I'll discuss unnecessary hardship. This property is uniquely situated at a 90-degree bend in West Road, which provides for an abnormal amount of frontage subject to the 50-foot parking setback and no side yards at all. So the applicant seeks to take advantage of the existing building that has been on this site for over 30 years and adaptively repurpose it from the trampoline park to a very similar use, the Black Rock Social Club. So the existing built environment is a special condition of this property. There's also a variety of commercial and municipal uses in the area, and the property's former trampoline park use did not impose any unreasonable burden on its surroundings. There's no reason to believe that the proposed use will do so now. It's a reasonable reuse of the existing built environment. And lastly, there's no fair and substantial relationship between the purpose of the ordinance as it's applied to this particular property. There's no fair and substantial relationship between the prohibition of indoor recreation use in a restaurant in the industrial zone and its application to this property because its past use as a trampoline park did in fact serve food. The parking relief requested is de minimis and it's necessary to accommodate safe and conforming travel lanes, so the proposed use here will not frustrate the purpose of the ordinance. So in conclusion, I do believe that all the necessary criteria for this board to grant the variances and bring this property into compliance have been met. So with that, I do respectfully ask that this board grant the variances as advertised and requested. Mark Giannini, our architect, is here. Alex Ross, our architect. Alex Choquette, the owner, and myself happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions for Attorney Bozen? Mr. Graham?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In particular to the, I'm curious about the outdoor dining, and I know there was some stuff in prior applications that was presented to us. They didn't go over in detail, but I just want to understand, I think there is a plan. This is a very lengthy package, so pardon me while I look for it, but I think you have a plan towards the end of the package that kind of shows what the intent is. Could you just kind of go over what the outdoor dining is going to look like?
Yeah, in fact, I may ask either Mark or Alex just to kind of walk through the outdoor dining section of the plan.
And then I think I'm looking at page 70 of our packet.
I'm sorry, which page?
Page 70 has a site plan I think is relevant, but I just want to validate with your team that that's the case. It's page 70 on our
Yeah.
screens.
Do you want to take that, Mark?
Evening, Mark Janae from Portsmouth Architects. So the intent is, as you can see there, there's an outdoor seating area with 2, 4, 6, about 10 picnic tables. Just in front of that, there's a container that's been proposed to be converted to serve drinks and some food. Though most of the food will come from the main kitchen inside the building. So that would be brought out through the patio and the sidewalk on the right. And then there's a hatched area for crossing the driveway. And then there'd be the hardscaped area in front of the container. So the two seating areas would kind of there'd be some seating on the patio just outside the building, and then the picnic benches. And then that whole area is actually proposed to be closed off to regular vehicle traffic with the fences that are going to go around the back of the building. So if there's an outdoor seating happening or an event, you wouldn't have to worry about vehicles passing through there.
Okay, so you're going to have the container is going to be positioned somewhere next to that pad that's behind the main parking lot is the intent?
Yeah, so the container's right here. There's
Okay.
there's an existing concrete pad there that used to be for the dumpsters.
Yep.
So that's been converted to basically an area where we can serve food or drinks.
Okay, and is there intent to make that more impervious surface, or is that going to remain sort of a grassy area, or what's the vision there?
So the area out where the picnic benches is, that would stay basically a grassy area. The only impervious would be what is existing now.
Okay.
So the concrete pad where the dumpster is, or where the dumpsters used to be, and then the existing asphalt.
Okay, and then parking is not affected by the proposed outdoor seating. Is that a true statement? You'll not be
That is true.
increasing? Okay, that's helpful. And then segueing into parking, and I'm not sure if you're the expert or if we need a different expert, but just looking at page 6 of the narrative that you have as page 17 in our packet. Admittedly, planning board has taken parking away from this board, but we do have a couple of the variances that are in front of us that talk a little bit to parking. So I just want to try and look at sort of in the middle of that page, you sort of have the current parking and then the required parking spaces, and then there's a parking delta. Can you kind of just talk to a little bit about that, how that was calculated, and if there's any concerns associated with that?
Yeah, so, well, two things on this, because there was the staff report that came out in the last day or so that had done a parking calc. That came up with 78 spaces based on the requested use. My parking calc is slightly more conservative possibly, where I came up with 95 spaces, and I broke up the indoor recreation, the restaurant, and the office space.
Okay.
So I came up with a slightly higher number. But either way, right now the parking lot has been striped for 78 spaces. And we do have areas within the parking lot that we can add additional striped spaces, legal spots that meet zoning, to help make up that delta.
Okay, is there any current plan to try and do that, or is that?
It's something we can certainly do, just at this time it hasn't occurred.
And then I have, if I may continue, Madam Chair, just a couple questions for staff, I guess. So I just want to find out, the last time that the applicant was before the board and received approvals back in 2022, so about 4 years ago, one of the items was not the parking between the building and a right of, a principal building and a street. Did the zoning ordinance change in that time frame to apply to industrial districts? Is that what happened? Do you know? Is there any discussion on that amongst planning staff?
There wasn't specifically about that. I could get a more detailed answer for you if I had more time, but
Okay, nope, that's fine. And then I just want to make sure the staff is confident, considering that we're finding ourselves sort of, revisiting what was approved back in 2022. Staff is confident that the requested relief of 9.43, a restaurant and function room with an occupant level between 250 and 500, that would cover all of the things that the applicant has described both here tonight and in their application of the kinds of events, like maybe like a comedian or something, chatting it up with some, making some folks chuckle and whatnot. That would be covered by that restaurant use, is that correct?
yes.
Okay,
Yep. As described in the application and so far in the presentation, everything seems consistent.
okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay. Mr. Neese?
Madam Chair, if I could follow up with that last question with staff. And Attorney Bozen may want to listen to this as well. In the application, one of the things that the applicant requests is a place of assembly, which is not called out for in our legal notice. And if you look in the zoning ordinance, place of assembly is allowed to have entertainment, which presumably could be comedy or music stuff. That's not listed as an accessory use for our restaurant in our ordinance. And so I'm kind of following up on Mr. Raham's question about whether if we just grant the restaurant, should the board just grant the restaurant and function room variance as listed in our legal notice, will that cover their intent to have entertainment as well?
Unless the applicant has a different version of place of assembly, I'm confident that it would cover the events as described.
Okay. I have a few other questions as well. I've got a parking question. Sorry. So I'm trying to understand how I thought I heard you say something about there would be a fence that would prevent traffic from going by the outdoor dining area, but maybe I misunderstood that.
Yes, correct.
So how does that fence exist and not affect those parking spaces behind the building?
Well, they would be using those parking spaces for staff, and then also they could still let people in to occupy those spaces. But the intent is that there wouldn't be an open flow.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple other questions. I'm not sure if they're probably for Mr. Bozen, not for you this time, I think. So are there any plans for outdoor music or entertainment in the outdoor dining area?
Currently, no, but I'm sure, and, that's part of the programming. Do you anticipate having any outdoor music outside? So not currently? I mean, because I don't know if you've been inside the place, but it's pretty, you should come, it's fun. But it's a big interior, and there's plenty of room inside. The outside really is not that big. I can't imagine practically it being a successful event if they try to do anything outside other than short of maybe having, 8 to 10 people having lunch. I would say no.
Okay. Respect to hours of operation, I think the application says late afternoon into the evening, probably later than that. But is there do you envision any daytime conferences or meetings in the function room in the future?
In the day, yes. We do anticipate, it could be used for a corporate outing. There have been, requests for that sort of thing. So, yeah, I think that's a possibility.
All right. And I got a question that I'm not sure if it's for you or for staff relates to Mr. Raham's question about parking. My assumption here is that when we should we grant the parking variances, it's related to the location of parking and not the number of spaces, since that's a planning board thing. I just want to make sure the applicant understands that.
Yes, we do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
If I can, just one follow-up.
Sure.
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I understand this fence, because I guess after you described it, it's a little bit different than the mental model I had in my brain. Could you just bring back up looking at that plan, could you just kind of outline for us, one of the two of you, where you think that fence is going to go?
Mark, I'll let you take the planner.
And if you, just don't touch this the screen, as I always say. Oh, very sensitive.
Wrong button. Sorry, so the fence would start here at the corner of the building and go across the property. There'd be a sliding gate for vehicles that would be operated with a remote. There's also a man door here. There's a sidewalk that goes along here, so there's a gate. And then the fence is going to continue along the property line on the right side of the page, and then again on the back here. And then on this end, there's also another vehicle gate that's sliding and automated, and another gate for pedestrians.
Okay. Yeah, that was definitely not what I was thinking. Okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions on the board? So I have a couple. Philip, isn't that fence already there?
The fence is partially there. Yes, it was partially installed. It hasn't been completed because we're waiting for approvals.
Okay. And this question is to Attorney Bozen. So talking about substantial justice, the loss to the applicant and the benefit to the public, the benefit really is a loss to the public, whatever, you know, but so the public's benefit analysis is the deviation from the zoning ordinance, what the public loses when the zoning ordinance is deviated from. Can you touch on that a little bit more? You talked about the community benefits of the space, but you could address that?
I'm sorry, ma'am, can you repeat the question?
Yes, so what is the benefit, how does the benefit to the applicant outweigh the loss to the public of granting this variance, that deviating from the zoning ordinance, because this is industrial, and
There's
so-
really no benefit to the public if this variance were denied, right? I mean, it's an industrial zone. I think it's the same argument that we raised back in 2022. There's really no benefit to the public. The public does not benefit in any way by denying this variance request. I think that's the central issue.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. Mattson, Mr. Rossi? Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
So with no further questions from the board, I will open up the public hearing. If there are those who are here to speak in favor of this application, please step to the podium and state your name and your address for the record.
My name is Alex Choquette. Thank you for being here this week. I know you were met last week, so I do appreciate it. I'm the owner of Black Rock and also Road to the West, and it's been my intent since I was a little teenager that I always wanted to do something nice for the community. And really the whole message about Black Rock and what we're doing is just try to be a good neighbor to our neighbors and a good steward to the community. We really focus the whole mission on helping raise money for all the nonprofits, and we've done hundreds of them. And before Black Rock, we would always show up at the different meetings and donate money. We were at one today, actually. So we're just here to try to be good stewards to the community. We do appreciate your consideration, and we're here to answer any other questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here who would like to speak in favor of this application?
Hi, I'm Kevin Watt. I represent 100 West LLC and Metropolitan Pipe and Supply, who lease the building at 100 West. We're the neighbor to the right-hand side where they actually want to put the patio and the seatings and everything there. We have no issue with what they want to do. And then we also have 24 parking spaces at our location that they're more than happy to be able to use if they need to.
Okay, thank you. Is there any, you can just, if you're speaking in favor, just please come up to the podium.
Hi, I'm Michael Blackman, 27 Albany Street. I attended a Chamber of Commerce business after hours at the Black Rock, and we had many people there, and we raised a lot of money for workforce housing, and I feel that it's a venue that Alex has opened up to the community and turned an industrial space into a purposeful building that does have benefit for the public. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Sean Tracy, and I have a business here in town, and I've been a resident for over 30 years. I've known Alex Choquette for about 10 years now.
Could
He's
you please
outstanding.
could you please state your address?
24 Johnson Court.
Okay, thank you.
So I've known Alex Choquette for about 10 years. He's a very outstanding man, an amazing and dedicated philanthropist like I've never seen. I've been to Black Rock maybe 10 or 12 times, and it's a very wonderful environment. It's more than a venue or a restaurant. It's a very unique place to meet and commune with locals and people. He's it's very community oriented, and I don't think that the location is very unique. It's not in town, so there is parking. I don't think any of the variances requested would inconvenience anyone. I can't imagine any loss to the public if all the variances are granted, only benefit to the public. Black Rock has created a number of great jobs for local people. Alex and Black Rock are huge supporters of live local music and happens there all the time, almost every night. And just a little side bit, I play in a Steve Miller tribute band, and I'm hoping to play there this December. And about the dancing, I know it may seem like a small item, but I can say that we play in places with my band that have dancing, and some don't, like Jonathan's in Agunquit, because they don't have the space and they need to take the ticket sales for seats. But those that do have dancing attract many more fans, and specifically because they can dance. I highly encourage the city to grant all the variances for the benefit of the community and its people. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Dodge. I first moved to Portsmouth 99 Hanover Street in 2017 after 30 years as an active duty Marine. After 9 deployments and 10 moves, I asked my wife where she wanted to live, and she happened to pick Portsmouth, New Hampshire. And so for the last 10 years, we've done several things in the community to support the fabulous organizations that support our veterans and their families. My first exposure to Alex was in 2017 when I was sponsoring a veterans account event, and there was Alex. And the next time I went to an Operation Hat Trick, there was Alex. I went to a Wounded Warrior event to support that, and there was Alex. So I said, who is this guy? And I got to know him a little bit. And I started to see all of the different things that he did for the community and all of the other things that the community did for our wounded warfighters and their families. So one of the greatest parts about being in this great Seacoast community was really being able to identify all those things that the community does for our wounded warfighters and their families. I joined the Black Rock because the Black Rock does indeed support these charities. I've gone to 8 different charity events in the last year that Alex supports through the Black Rock. So all I can say from all of these different experiences, how much Portsmouth does to support this significant community that's made sacrifices for our country, that anything that makes Portsmouth better makes the Seacoast community better, and the Black Rock makes this Seacoast community better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, board members. My name is Larry Venata, 5 Wood Road, Durham, New Hampshire. My wife and I own several entertainment indoor venues in the area, including Portsmouth Team Building, Monkey Mind Escape Rooms, and several others. And I know what it's like to run a business like this, and the staff and Alex and his team are just amazing. You go into the Black Rock, they're very welcoming. Everything's done very professionally. I personally have been to several of the fundraisers as well at the Black Rock, including a fundraiser at Annie's Angels that the Black Rock was involved. I do support the fact that they should have these variances for a number of different reasons. It definitely enhances the community experience. When you go there, you meet people. It's very friendly. It's very inviting. It's a great asset to the community. The more options there are for customers that come into Portsmouth, we do a lot with tourism. They love a lot of different options. So as much as we do indoor entertainment, they do the same thing. They do it top notch. We also collaborate on a bunch of different venues, different projects that we're working on. And I think it's a great asset to be part of the community. So thank you very much for considering these variances.
Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Anna Hayes, 1 Kate Street. I'm a Army officer. I got out of the Army in 2021, and I just want to speak towards the community element, not just from the fundraising perspective, but when you leave the military, it's just so nice to have community and a place to congregate. So I really appreciate that Black Rock is here and that there's affordable membership options for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Board. My name is Attorney Frank Simler. I've had a long-standing relationship with the community here in Portsmouth. My wife and I currently live in Dover, but I was fortunate enough to open the McLean Middleton office with Charles de Grandpré, who some of you may remember. Charlie and I opened the office on Congress Street back in the 1980s. And part of my responsibility as an attorney over the years is to represent different clients such as Live Nation, and I've represented Live Nation in many, many states, and have also been a part of, for example, producing Boston Strong. I was the rights broadcast producer, and I was the television broadcast producer. So I've had occasion to be involved with entertainment, including representing some of the biggest acts coming out of Boston, including Aerosmith and Jay Giles and the Cars and many others. Godsmack, many, many others. The interior build-out of Black Rock is unquestionably one of the nicest venues that I know of in the 6 New England states. Alex's attention to detail and his willingness to invest to enhance the experience for the consumers that go to Black Rock is beyond reproach. It's absolutely stunning. I think it's a unique enhancement to the community to have an owner and an operator that's willing to engage in such a build-out that enhances the quality of life for the community of Portsmouth. And I can't see any reason why this would be a detriment to the community. Nothing that I could see in my 41 years of practicing law. I've known Alex for 16 years. I know of his philanthropy. My son is a good friend with Alex, currently serving in Iraq, and I'm asking that you support Alex because he supports veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favor of the application?
Good evening. My name is Patrick Kane, 213 Gate Street, former U.S. Marine, former owner of Kane Insurance, and a partner at High Street Insurance and Financial Services. I've known Alex for many years, one of the finest gentlemen that I've met, gives to pretty much every organization. If you guys have any tonight, he might donate to your organization. Black Rock's a great spot. I bring clients there. I can't think of not one reason why this wouldn't be granted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who would like to speak in favor of this application? Okay. Is there anyone on Zoom still?
We do have somebody on Zoom, but they haven't raised their hand.
Excuse me?
Nobody on Zoom.
Okay, all right, thank you. So is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to this application? Okay. And is there anyone who would like to speak to, for, or against? Okay. Any final questions from the board before I close the public hearing? No? Okay. So I'll close the public hearing and I'll ask the board for its deliberation. Mr. Ram?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll give some opening thoughts if I could. First of all, I guess kind of dividing this up into two pieces. One is that we have some dimensional variances that are being asked for here related to the location of the parking. And, we've sort of added in also that the parking is between the principal building and the street. And as the applicants and I'm not sure if they reinforced it tonight, but it does have two front yards in the sense that it's on a curve on West Road. So that really would mean that parking on both on both those sides would essentially require the relief from this board. It's sort of agnostic to the actual uses that are in the building. I think it's, unless there was a use that had almost no parking requirement and could, satisfy all of that behind the building where there's, some parking but not a tremendous amount. Other than that really unusual case, I would say that pretty much regardless of the use that the building is being used for, the way it was set up, the way it is an existing structure, while we recognize that the desire to have parking behind a structure is an aspirational goal in our zoning ordinance. I think this board, has been pretty resilient about that and saying, hey, if you are tearing something down or if you're building something new, we want you to meet this new aspirational goal. But at the same point in time, we realize, especially when you're looking at the balancing test, that saying somehow that you have to meet it when there's an existing structure, an existing parking arrangement that has been in place for a long period of time, somehow now saying that is no longer acceptable and you have to go through the extra effort of somehow either relocating all your parking or tearing your building down and moving it over. Really that, from the balancing test, I think that places an undue burden upon an applicant with very little, true public benefit. Really, we want to see that the next generation of buildings in these, really in pretty much every one of our zones, right? This is kind of like become a blanket requirement for the future vision for how we call for development to require that in the future. But we recognize that there's many exceptions, and I think certainly along West Road, and if looking through the various neighboring properties, really see almost really none of them that have all their parking behind them. They all follow the more traditional pattern of you put parking in front and you put the building either typically in the middle, maybe to the back end. There is the 2 foot where 50 feet is required. Again, that is something related to the industrial district. I don't think there's many of the properties in this general area of West Road that fully comply with that. Some are better than others. 2 feet is probably on the lower end of that scale. But nonetheless, it is, pretty much every one of the properties that you're looking at are going to have some kind of parking in front of the building, and it's probably going to be less than 50 feet. Probably more than 2, but definitely not meeting the full 50 feet. So, and again, this is an existing condition that regardless of use is being asked for. So in my mind, those asks are probably pretty reasonable. And then it really comes down to these use variances. And I kind of, again, trying to look at the neighborhood as a whole, looking at our page 4 of our packet, it's the staff memo, page 3. It's kind of an interesting neighborhood in that it is, yes, zoned industrial, running up through West Road all the way until it makes it up to Beverly Hill Road. But we also have immediately across the street from this is the G1 district, and then slightly up the street is G2. So a couple of our gateway districts that we have there. And, the kind of interesting part really to me too is that right across the street really is the Eversource building, which is probably one of the more industrial uses in this whole neighborhood, where you got, big trucks, you've got lots of equipment that's there, reels of cable and whatnot that shows up, sometimes poles and things. That really feels industrial, yet that's the property that's in the G1 district. It's not in the industrial district. Where you have this property on the other side of the street that is, not really configured kind of the same way, and, it is in the industrial. And then sort of continuing on up the street towards Beverly Hill Road, the next property up is, the owner came forward and said, hey, we're, a plumbing warehousing supply. that's great. I know the previous owner of that same property actually had like a retail space in there, or sort of essentially retail. I mean, I went in there many times renovating my home, picked out stuff, paid for it, and then picked it up later. It sounded kind of retail to me, which really isn't an allowed use in the industrial zone, but was something that was there for many years and, you know, seemed to fit in okay with some of the other things that were going on. Further up the street, you have an auto body place, which is, you know, not truly an industrial type of situation, and then sort of sandwiched in between is sort of a structure, again, not heavily industrial, but related to, I think it's a waste management services company. And then further on down West Road, you have sort of a mix of some, you know, maybe more industrial, but some others that are, you know, training oriented, some other things. There's certainly nothing immediately adjacent to this particular parcel here that is certainly anything I would consider heavily industrial, right? You're not going to have like a factory with, you know, a chimney and smoke belching out of it in any way. I mean, this is very close to a gateway district where we're aspiring to do, you know, different things and not so much towards the industrial side. So it kind of begs the question of, you know, how is there any wiggle room with the proposed uses, which, yeah, are not characteristic of industrial, but if you look at what's allowed, so the first request, section 9.43, a restaurant and function room, if this parcel were G1 and G2, it is not, but if it were, like across the street, those would be allowed by special exception, not truly permitted outright, but the special exception criteria, which is a somewhat lower bar, quite a bit lower bar really than a variance requirement. Something we say basically, we think this is an appropriate use, but we want to do that extra check just to make sure that what you're proposing isn't completely out of the norm and could still fit in okay with the other properties. And then similarly, the 4.30 indoor recreation use where it is not allowed is also would be a special exception in both G1 and G2. And then the 19.50, the outdoor dining accessory use to a permitted principal use, again, if those were permitted, that is a permitted use in both the G1 and G2. So in my mind, this kind of comes down to, you know, how do we look at how it got zoned, and, you know, in general in the future, you know, as we go through the master planning process now, is this an area that we might be looking forward to trying to sort of change at least maybe part of the West Road, probably not the whole entire area, but part of it to sort of match some of what's between West Road and Lafayette Road. You know, in general, I'm not a general advocate of pushing zoning ahead of where it's at in terms of the ordinance saying, you know, this is, or zoning map saying this is currently industrial, but at the same point in time, I think it does kind of beg some questions. And then I know that we're, you know, the applicant does not have by right. They were granted some variances back 4 years ago, recognizing that some of the arguments that says, hey, you know, maybe by right we should be allowed to continue that. They are coming before us. We are looking at this afresh. But as we would with, you know, any sort of grandfathered use, or even someone who's come before us and said, hey, a builder built this thing for me, my fence, you know, I want to be able to keep what's been in place for a while. I mean, I do think that there is evidence that says that this use has not proven to be, you know, incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood, that it actually, and maybe in some ways, is more reflective of that. So considering that it has been there, while I'm normally a bit harder about saying, hey, it's never been there before. I was not part of the board in 2022 when that decision was made. But at the same point in time, with it being there, I do think that weighs positively in saying, you know, it has not been negatively impactful. It is corresponding to a very, you know, what is essentially the zoning that's right across the street. And in that sense, you know, we could consider moving on with it. Last thing I'll talk about is just parking. Again, that's been removed from this board's purview, but that would probably be my single biggest concern with this project. Is, you know, they're already talking about maybe partitioning off some of the back parking. I also was at the business after hours event, and parking was a major issue. Appreciate that the neighbor is talking about saying, hey, they can use some of my parking, but and again, it's not the purview of this board, other than, you know, its placement relative to West Road, but that may be an issue that the planning board will be looking at pretty carefully as part of the site plan review process. So those are my thoughts.
Any other thoughts? Mr. Hayes, Mr. Murphy, Mr. Rossi? Okay, so I will say that I will not be supporting this application because I think what we're seeing here is a real expansion of uses with respect to this property. I appreciate Attorney Bozen's fine presentation and all the people that spoke in support. I'm sure sounds like there's some very fine events going on there, but in 2013, this board, I was not in it, granted the request to convert the industrial building to a health club. And at that point, I remember Attorney Mulligan talking, I think when he was here for the May 22 variance request, talked about the board giving a very expansive definition of health club. And then after that, we went to do a private indoor recreation facility. And now we're doing a restaurant, a place of assembly, and also an outdoor dining area. And, it just seems like it keeps going on and on and on. This is an industrial area. It's just not something that I can support. I think it is a pretty good lesson to us that when we do grant variances, that they can go in this trajectory. I disagree with Mr. Ram to a certain extent because I think that it is up to the city council to perhaps rezone this area, but I don't find that this area supports this kind of use. There's no other restaurants late at night. There's no other drinking establishments late at night. I think there's a Hebert's there, which operates during the day, but this is also introducing a use of nighttime events, although I guess apparently they're going on now, which I'm not really sure. I see how that happened, but it's very odd, and I think that it's introducing a use that we really don't see in this area, even though it is a little bit kind of varied. And I'm just looking at the industrial, the way that this is zoned industrially. So those are my thoughts.
I'll share some thoughts. I guess so. To me, looking at the parking first, just because it seems a little more straightforward. This building is where it is. The parking is where it is. It seems pretty reasonable to allow that to be maintained as it is. I understand the reason why the zoning does want parking in the back for structures in terms of curb appeal and walkability, and kind of avoiding a strip mall effect. I think that's less relevant or important and impactful here, maybe perhaps because it is the industrial zone, but specifically because the whole neighborhood isn't as built up as somewhere like the downtown or Islington Street or West End. So it seems pretty reasonable to grant the variances for parking between the building and the street and the 2-foot setback where the parking is. Regarding the uses, it's because it is an industrial zone, it's not allowed. To me, it seems pretty reasonable. If anything, I guess my logic would be that the industrial zone would be more imposing on this use in this establishment rather than this establishment's impact on the industrial zone. If you have a list of uses that are industrial uses, they have to be allowed somewhere, and so we do have this industrial zone. And perhaps, historically, portions of this zone were used more industrially, but currently in the proximity of this parcel and this neighborhood, to me it seems quite reasonable to allow this type of use. I agree it's been a little bit of a moving target, but I think all of these uses are in the same vein and compatible with each other, and I guess I'm generally supportive of being able to justify this use.
Any other? Mr. Neese?
Yeah, to me, the parking's no-brainer unless we want to tell this guy he's got to tear down his building, which is, to me, completely unreasonable. The only other thing I'm a little concerned about is expanding the use to outdoor dining area. However, this is a relatively small outdoor dining area, but I'm still wrestling with that one.
So I do want to say, I agree, I normally, Mr. Rayam and I tend to disagree about this, but I normally don't like to segment out variance requests when it's their package. However, I should add that I have no problems with the parking variances on this, and if needed, they could be segmented out, but I don't know if they will be needed, so. Any comments? Mr. Rossi?
Yes, I will be supporting the variance requests if someone makes a motion to do that. Sometimes things require a very fine-toothed analysis of the pros and cons of each and every aspect of a multiple variance request, but I don't think, honestly, this is one of those cases. This is largely variances to reflect the current conditions on the ground, which are operating peacefully and in harmony with the surrounding area, and I just don't think there's any rationale for picking it apart further than that. So I'm in support.
Any other comments or? So, I mean, I understand the point. Everybody's entitled to their opinion. You know, these were things that I don't know exactly how, through permitting and, like, you know, allowing for a liquor license, that these things did start to occur. However, you know, our previous variance request was just for the private indoor recreation facility. But, so, that gives me concerns. But anyway, Mr. Rayam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, just two more points. One is, you know, we've heard a lot this evening from both the applicant and from many of those who spoke, and I appreciate all that about, you know, the good things that the applicant and, you know, is doing for the community through the structure. That said, the requests that are before us are not for a, you know, a charitable facility or anything along those lines. They are for a restaurant use, an outdoor restaurant use, and the last one, the recreation use. Thank you. That are there. I mean, regardless of the great works, these are things that are going to run with the land. At some point in time, if this particular owner, you know, sells, moves on for whatever set of reasons, somebody new comes in, they're going to take advantage of them in whatever ways that they see. So we don't necessarily aren't able to look at that unless it's something specific to the application. While we may appreciate the specific owner and what they're doing today, can't rely on that. And then I definitely don't want to rehash, you know, decisions that were made in the past, but I do think that, you know, when I went back through and looked at the original application, and it was definitely certainly indications that many of the things of an indoor restaurant use were going to be there. The outdoor certainly is something new. I feel more comfortable with the outdoor in the sense that it would be a permitted accessory use if this were in a G district, which again is kind of my thinking. It's right across the street. Yeah, I don't like necessarily extending things too far in advance of the city council, but at the same point in time, I think we, you know, kind of already have a situation where we're somewhat there, and I think that I'm more comfortable with it than what I normally would be. So those are my last two thoughts.
So, Mr. Neese, perhaps we can have a motion soon, so.
I'll wait till there's a motion.
Okay. So is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the application as advertised and presented.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
Okay.
Go through the criteria. I'll take the first two together. The variance is not contrary to the public interest and the spirit of the ordinance is observed. And here, the proposed use must not conflict with the purpose of the ordinance. And this use is allowed in the ordinance. It's just in this specific zone of industrial zoning that is not allowed. But this is on the edge of that zone, near another zone where it's allowed, only separated by a street, which is a special condition of this. And the the essential character of the neighborhood will not be altered by this. It's already exists there, and the neighborhood is somewhat eclectic, and in terms of industrial, from an industrial standpoint, it's a pretty de minimis component. And this doesn't threaten public health, safety, or welfare, or otherwise injure public rights. So it's not contrary to the public interest. For the and then also the parking is already existing where it is, and there's no reason that this the parking has a negative impact either. The next criteria is that substantial justice is done, and here it's a weighing. The benefit to the applicant should not be outweighed by harm to the general public or to other individuals. And I think this is a pretty easy one because granting these variances would benefit the applicant and benefit the public. So substantial justice would definitely be done. The next criteria is that the values of surrounding properties are not diminished. And we haven't heard any expert testimony either way, but there's no reason to think that the way this property is being utilized would be detrimental to the neighboring properties. And then the last criteria is that literal enforcement of the ordinance would result in unnecessary hardship. And here we've got special conditions of the property that distinguish it from others in the area. The physical reality of it being on this sharp bend in West Road is somewhat unique. This existing structure where it is located with the parking as it is, it's it would be an unnecessary hardship to have to demolish this building and move it closer to the street and rebuild parking in the back. And this would be true regardless of the use, and that it's a revision to the zoning that is more recent, and it seems to be more applicable to future builds. And then again, it is zoned industrial, but it's on the edge of the industrial zone. And in terms of the surrounding neighborhood, if you didn't look at a map and see that this was industrial zone, it's not very obviously any more or less industrial than perhaps some other places where this type of use would be allowed. And so it seems to make a lot of sense. And then finally, the proposed use is a reasonable one. And in fact, it is and has been, and I think it should continue to be.
Okay. Anything for your second, Mr. Ram?
Yeah, I agree with almost everything. I used the word de minimis at one point, and in respect to the opinion that the chair is bringing forward here, I don't think there's anything de minimis about these requests. I would say that they are justified. So if you're comfortable with the idea that they're justified requests, I'm good with everything that you said. And then really just to kind of add on to a couple of things on the hardship, and you kind of talked to it sort of being on the edge of industrial. I think really the fact that it's right up against the gateway zone as well, and which is something that again would allow most of these uses, and it is somewhat uniquely situated in that industrial zone in which that it really is sort of right up against it, like the long side of the property is up against the gateway. Some of these other properties, they go back deeper. They really have more potential use, I think, for some of the more traditional industrial concepts that come forward. This particular lot, with its sort of shape configuration, I think contributes to the idea that, it's not perfectly suited for the industrial, and that giving it some additional leeway with respect to being on the edge, right up against the gateway district, and giving it, we're not inventing something brand new here. We're saying that, hey, gateway, these are things that would essentially be allowed, admittedly with special exceptions, but essentially be allowed. I think works in the favor of this applicant. And then I'd say the outdoor use, which I do think is an expansion of what was, previously reviewed and seen by this board, and granted, maybe there was some miscommunication there, but I think it's ultimately going to be very limited. With the applicants, what they're asking for is in a relatively small portion of the property, and I just don't think you can expand it very much. Just the physical constraints of the property would prevent that from happening. So I think that's another factor, sort of a hardship, and then characteristics of the neighborhood. I mean, I just think that you're not going to be looking at a huge outdoor use regardless of who owns the property in the future. It's just physically not possible, and maintaining probably the level of parking that you would need to support the indoor aspects of the property. So, and it still does have a couple of additional reviews to go through. It's still got planning board site plan review, which they may have issues with the parking and or configuration. So remains to be seen what that board will be looking at specifically. But I think for the purposes of this board, they are meeting our 5 criteria, and I recommend approval.
Any discussion on the motion? Mr. Nees?
Just try and be brief. In light of some of the history on this, in light of some of the history on this, I just want to make clear that my understanding is what we're doing is going to allow the applicant to have entertainment in this facility, even though it's not specifically called out as a place of assembly or as a performance facility. But based on staff, that's our understanding is that's allowed. I just want to get that on the record.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Rossi?
I just want to comment to the folks who showed up today to make public comment, even though a lot of it was not directly addressing the criteria that we have to consider in allowing or disallowing an application for variance. I do want to express my appreciation for people who showed up, made their statements, sometimes very heartfelt, and tapped into some fairly deep emotions. And we don't see that very often here in a positive sense. And I think it was quite good that people did show up and express those things. So thank you very much for coming tonight.
Any other discussions on the motion? Okay. So with that, I will call the question. The motion is to approve the variance requests as presented and advertised, but I just want to make sure, Vice Chair Mattson, you're comfortable with, you accept Mr. Rayum's additions or modifications to your motion?
I do, and I actually like the word justified better than de minimis, yes.
Yeah, because they're not de minimis.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
Okay. All right, so with that, I will ask for a vote. Let me start with Mr. Rossi.
Yes.
Mr. Rayum?
Yes.
Vice Chair Mattson?
Yes.
Mr. Neese?
Yes.
And the chair votes no. But it is approved 4-1. Thank you. Okay, so that is the only item of business on tonight's agenda. So, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.